Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Players Championship DFS Tactics Show. We are here for all of your last-minute DFS questions for the Players Championship. We have the updated forecast, the up-to-the-second ownership projections, everything you need to optimize your lineups for the big week at hand. We have a lot to get into. Let's get into it, shall we? All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. Believe me, there are a lot of great analytics tools out there. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You won't regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I post research every week on the PGA Tour, typically around prior winners, patterns that they follow, and the players who fit the criteria of the pattern that I've found. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests that I play. That'll come out after the show this evening, also after I finalize my lineups. But that'll come out later tonight. So if you want to see those pieces of information, then give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. He continues to provide you information throughout the week with his own version of recent form, course history. It's a great way to get a leg up on your competition. And if you are a subscriber to that article, which is free to do, by the way, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS talk after the DFS Tactics show here on Calls. He is gracious enough to host me over there. We continue the talk. We continue our DFS thoughts, our top fades and pivots. We talk about game theory, a lot of things over in his Substack chat. So really suggest that if you don't want to miss out on all of that great information, you're going to need to subscribe to that article to do that. And lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all in addition to the poll question, which I'll put up momentarily. Who is your winner to win the Players Championship? Who are you pivoting to, fading away from? Are you going into the 5Ks this week? Are you going all the way up to Scotty Scheffler this week? Would love to hear the interaction from the community this evening. Any thoughts that you have regarding the Players Championship and all that. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Players Championship. And we're going to start with the up to the second forecast over at Windfinder. And before I get too much into that, I'll go ahead and post the poll question. There's been a little bit of talk this week, or at least a lot of talk in circles that I follow and communicate with and whatnot, how there's been a lot of previous history or a pattern of the winners of the Players Championship coming from the Thursday AM, Friday PM portion of the draw. Now, we'll get into the forecast, see if I feel like there's any favor of half of the draw for the week. But the poll question centers around that. Which half of the draw are you favoring in your lineups? And I only had 4 options, so if there was a 5th option, I would have put no favor. But as it is, what half of the draw are you favoring in your lineups? Are you favoring the Thursday AM, Friday PM, heavily or slightly? Or are you going with the Thursday PM, Friday AM portion, heavily or slightly? So would love to hear the community's thoughts on that. As we move to the forecast for the Players Championship, and tomorrow, this has been pretty consistent throughout today. Now, this is Florida. Weather can change pretty drastically, pretty quickly. But there doesn't look to be too much, especially tomorrow. Now, yes, the Thursday AM has the best half, I would think, with very, very little wind in the forecast. Probably picks up a little bit into the afternoon, But even if it stays, or even if it picks up a little bit into, like 10 to 15 mile an hour gusts, that's really not a whole lot for TPC Sawgrass. Considering we've seen 20 to 25 sustained gusts into the 40s in the past couple of years. So I don't see too much on Thursday. Yes, you could absolutely argue that the Thursday AM has the better half of it. But it gets canceled out a little bit on Friday. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Are you ready for the Players Championship? Who is your winner? Anything else that you're thinking about for the Players Championship this week? Much appreciated to see you in chat again this evening. The reason why I think it gets canceled out, or at least the Thursday AM gets its favorable draw canceled out. Look at Friday. They're definitely dealing with the worst of the wind in terms of the cut portion, with actual projections being into that 10 to 15 mile an hour range for gusts. So you do have the best half of the draw tomorrow morning, but you got the worst end of it on Friday afternoon. So I think that cancels out the Thursday PM, Friday AM kind of has the same amount of wind in terms of sustained and gusts. It does switch directions a little bit, but as of right now, emotionally invested in Doug Gim. We're going to talk a lot about Doug Gim. I'm not so much emotionally, but I think I'm going to be financially invested in Doug Gim. Like his prospects this week, but I don't see much of a favor of the draw this week, at least with this forecast. Now, of course, if you have the capability, the ability to stay up to the next update on Windfinder, which will probably be in about an hour and a half, maybe a couple hours. Or if you have the ability / capability to wake up early in the morning tomorrow to get the updated forecast, I'm going to suggest you do that. But if this is the last forecast that you have to work with before finalizing your lineups, I just don't see much of an advantage, because I do not want... I don't like targeting players that have the worst half of the draw coming in, or worst part of the wind, I should say, coming into trying to make the cut, which means that if they don't play well tomorrow morning, they're going to be really, really on the back foot. I just don't see a whole lot here. I mean, the way I would exploit this in terms of this forecast, I would load up in terms of first round leader Thursday AM tomorrow. I mean, especially the earliest of the early. I think that's how I would attack this forecast for the first 2 days. If you are in the first round leader market, so target the earliest of the early Thursday AM, I think is the best way I would go about that. But otherwise, I think this is just a week to play your guys who you think is going to play Sawgrass the best, regardless of the draw. And then we'll zoom out, go ahead and take a look at Saturday or Sunday, even though we don't have the super forecast. We didn't see too much in terms of wind on Friday when we looked into the super forecast. It does show perhaps a little bit more wind than maybe I was giving it credit for, but still don't feel all that great about it. Saturday, much the same in terms of wind. It actually appears to die down during the afternoon. And then Sunday, pretty consistent throughout the week. We just don't see a whole lot of wind in the forecast. There might be some rain overnight Saturday night. Again, I'm just not factoring it in too much this week in terms of my player exposures for the Players Championship. So with that, we're going to move to Fantasy National, and you'll see that I've got this set on the last 2 years, or 36 rounds, because I have the Pete Dye filter selected. And the reason I have it selected is because I did not use it in the mixed condition model, and I'll explain why as I go through my mixed condition model. But for our review, our quick review this evening, we're going to look at Pete Dye performance. So our top performers on Pete Dye designs in the past couple of years. Xander, Scotty, Keegan, Patrick Cantlay, Adam Hadwin, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Carson Young, Minwoo Lee, and Sung Jae. I meant to unstar these for you all since I was grabbing the up to the second ownership projections, which again, thanks to Gabe for sharing his sources information. So I'll have that off to the side when we start going through the price board and whatnot. But there are your top players in terms of Pete Dye performance in the last 2 years. Of course, we're looking at Harbor Town, Kiowa, if somebody played the PGA Championship in 2021, Stadium Course, TPC River Highlands, TPC Sawgrass, San Antonio is POA. That's the POA Trivialis. So we're looking at Harbor Town, Kiowa, the Stadium Course, American Express, TPC River Highlands, the Travelers, and of course Sawgrass, where we are this week. All right, don't want to go too much into it. Let's just go into our mixed condition model for the week and then start talking about the players in the field this week. So the mixed condition model for the week, there's a couple of things that I ended up caving into. The first is off the tee. I talked all week how I didn't think off the tee was going to be such a big factor, and yet through talking with Gabe yesterday, getting a feel for how he's attacking the players, or the DFS contests and whatnot, he made a pretty good point in the sense that much like Bay Hill last week, Sawgrass rewards target golf, especially off the tee. And sometimes distance can help that, but it is a lot more about the accuracy, and we'll talk about that quite a bit here in a little bit. But he was pretty darn confident in having some amount of off the tee in the mixed condition model. You could always argue how much, but he convinced me to put some off the tee in there. I don't have any filters with that. Again, I did not use any Pete Dye filters throughout any of these metrics, so perhaps a little bit off in that regard if you wanted to look at Pete Dye designs off the tee. But I'm just factoring in off the tee. This does reward target golf, generally on the accuracy side. So 5% off the tee. We talked all week how important iron play is at Pete Dye designs in general, especially here at Sawgrass. A full quarter of the mixed condition model, 25% in strokes gained approach. It's just been the most important shot type here by a pretty significant margin. It's been the most consistent metric of the 4 strokes gained. Just everything about Sawgrass signifies strokes gained approach. So wanted that to be easily the most important factor or metric in the mixed condition model. 25%. If anything, I would bring this down to 20% and maybe increase some percentage somewhere. But again, I am a strokes gained approach preferred analyst. It's the type of players that I prefer to target or go after anyway. So I'm going to be a little bit heavy in strokes gained approach, if anything, and that's just my bias. So 25% approach. 5% around the green. I was confident throughout the week that I would have around the green in the final mixed condition model. I did use long rough, considering they have really grown this rough out the past 2 or 3 years. It is not easy to play out of. So 5% with that, and 5% on POA Trivialis putting. Again, those courses that we've talked about all week: Harbor Town, Innisbrook, Quail Hollow, the Stadium Course, TPC San Antonio, TPC Sawgrass, and TPC Scottsdale. That is what this filter is. It's those courses the past 2 years, 5%. But I only have 5% because putting really hasn't been a huge factor here at Sawgrass. Generally, yes, if you're putting well, you're going to rise on the leaderboard, but it hasn't really contributed to huge amounts of success or correlation with putting. So I just wanted to have 5% there. I am making up for it a little bit at the end of the mixed condition model. 10% in good drives gained. I know we looked at this with the Pete Dye filter. I did not feel comfortable with the Pete Dye filter for a couple of reasons. Monday night we went through last year's mixed condition model where I used the Pete Dye filter on quite a lot, and it didn't turn out well. It produced mediocre results at best in terms of predictability and whatnot. So I am just wanting to look at players in the recency who are hitting fairways or still hitting the green when they're in the rough. And I'm hoping that this is going to simulate the players that aren't so far in the rough that they have to lay up, because that is an issue here at Sawgrass, that if you're out of the first cut per se, it's going to be really, really difficult to hit these greens. And, good drives also factors in greens and regulation as well. So I wanted to factor that in a little bit. That's why I had the real premium on accuracy this week approach and good drives. 10% in opportunities. I did bump this up an extra 5% because I did not factor in total procs. I was really debating on having total procs in, and I'm using opportunities as kind of that hidden 5% for total procs. But when bogey avoidance and birdies gained, when there's not a real clear leader or factor of those two, I really do like opportunities, along with if total procs seems to be a bigger deal, or if there's no particular range of proximity that seems to matter. Players who have just given themselves the most opportunities, and that's not going to be a whole lot around Pete Dye. So those players that are really dialed in, really giving themselves a lot of opportunities, this will come in especially a little bit later on with the par fives. I really want to emphasize those players, as they're going to be gaining a lot on the others in the field, because pars are generally good scores around here, except on the par fives and maybe the drivable par 4. This is by far was clearly the last metric in my model, the one I am least confident in my mixed condition model. I do have 5% on birdies or better gained. Now we saw Friday throughout the prior leaderboards, and even when we dug into the data of Sawgrass, that birdies gained was a pretty significant, more correlating factor than bogey avoidance, but didn't make a whole lot of sense for the reasons I just mentioned, that pars are generally good scores around here, other than on the par fives and the short par fours. I didn't want to ignore the data suggesting that birdies gained was by far and away more important than bogeys avoided. But I'm just not terribly confident with it. And because some of these par fives do yield an eagle at a decent rate, they are somewhat short. They are attackable if players are in the right spot and in the fairway and whatnot. I did put birdies or better gained, not just birdies gained. I did not feel comfortable using the difficult relative to par filter. I do think this is going to play a little bit easier than it has in the past due to the lack of wind that we talked about at the beginning of the show, especially tomorrow with very little wind in the forecast. So I do think it's going to play easier than it has. So I didn't feel comfortable using a scoring filter with this. So that's why it's only 5%. I wasn't confident on a filter, if to use a filter, and overall the metric in general. So only 5% there. We round out the mixed condition model, 5% in par threes. We've talked all week how they just don't really matter around Sawgrass. 10% in par fours, 15% in par fives. You just got to score on the par fives here. That's where you are going to make your hay around Sawgrass. They're generally short, attackable, but you can make bigger numbers on them if you aren't careful with all the water in play too. So par 5 performance is going to be the second biggest factor. I talked about that throughout the week and wanted to emphasize par 5 performance. lastly, to kind of fill in the gap of the only 5% putting, I'll bring this up, but when we looked at the course breakdown on Sunday night's initial research show, 3-putt percentage, once it loads, it's quite high here. It's quite high. These greens are lightning fast. So I wanted to see who avoids 3 putts, and yes, I still used the POA Trivialis Overseed as opposed to like faster lightning greens. I didn't feel like there was enough of a sample size to narrow it down to lightning POA Trivialis. So we're just looking at POA Trivialis, but 3-putt avoidance is going to be a decent little factor. So there's a look at the mixed condition model. Last thing I will mention about it, and I started it this week and going to be continuing forward, unless there was a specific filter like around the green, which is the last 12 months, and the putting, which is over 24 months because of the lack of sample size. Everything is now starting at the century from this year. So players like Matthew Pavone, Jake Knapp, they are really, really rising in my rankings, just as a forewarning, because they've played well this calendar year, this season. Players like Tommy Fleetwood, Victor, they've fallen significantly because they just haven't played all that well. Considering I'm not going back the full 12 months anymore, I feel like there's enough data that we can start looking just from the century forward. And if you are aware of the research that I posted Monday, you would know that very recent form is a major contributor to especially the champions or the winners of the Players Championship, but also to the players who have high level success. Recent form is something that was a key component of that. So that also fed into the reason why we're looking at just the century forward. So there's a look at the mixed condition model. What we have, the metrics that we're using, the percentages. I might be a little bit light off the tee. This is a gut feeling. 5% here, that could be, I'm not as confident in. Maybe it is bogeys avoided that we needed to look at. If you want to look at some Pete Dye filters on some of these metrics, if the wind picks up more than I think, then I could be weak to that because I'm not factoring in the wind. I'm just going by the forecast. Those are the areas where I think I would be weak. I just don't see distance playing a factor. That's why I've got so much of a premium on accuracy this week. But yeah, there is the mixed condition model that I have built for the Players Championship this week. With that, let's go ahead and move to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings, and this is going to be a shock. This will be a shock to everybody. But my number one player this week is Tom Hoge. I like everything about Tom Hoge this week. I've spent a lot of time, especially Monday, talking about his performance here at Sawgrass. So Tom Hoge is my number one player. Keith Mitchell, second. Scotty, third. Eric Van Rooyen, fourth. And Tony Finau round out my top 5. Corey Connors, Shane Lowry, Doug Gim, Sam Burns, and Siwoo Kim round out my top 10. Just as a reminder for those who are returning viewers, or for your information if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is a pure analytics number or ranking based on the mixed condition model that we just talked about, with the metrics and percentages that we put in there. And Fantasy National will spit out a ranking. Course value, an attempt. It is an attempt. It's not an exact science. But an attempt at giving a player a value based on how well they have played that course the past 5 years. The lower the number, the better. And then we are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options. So percent owned also, or percent owned per Fantasy National. also factors into my rankings. All right, let's just talk about the big thing that Scotty is not number one in my rankings. There's a slight caveat there. He is by far and away the number one player by purely the numbers. Several metrics that are top 5, second in approach, third in good drives, fifth in opportunities. I mean, very clearly number one by the numbers. He is the most projected owned player, obviously for good reason. But his course value is somewhat low or somewhat bad, considering that even though he is the defending champion, his 2 performances here at Sawgrass before winning was a T55 and a miscut. So even though he does have a win, he does have 2 other performances where he just did not play well here. So he's getting hurt a little bit in that regard. Keith Mitchell also surpassing him. And Keith Mitchell's somebody that I've been targeting all week, but I would not have thought he would jump Scotty Scheffler. You see, he's actually played Sawgrass pretty decently, 3rd in the rankings as well, and it's still fairly unique. And I'm telling you, the Fantasy National members are much more on Keith Mitchell than what Gabe's source has. And we'll get into that when we go through the price board. But there's a lot of things to like about Keith Mitchell. Look, I always talk about how his irons have been lackluster. In 2024, they've actually been pretty good. 20th in this field. A lot of that is from one tournament, so you don't expect him to go out and gain 8 in strokes gained approach like he did in Mexico. But they've been solid. He's gained more than he's lost, even if you take out that 8.1 or whatever he had in Mexico. He's actually been pretty good. Combined with a lower ownership, a decent course history, he devours par 5s, 2nd in opportunities, a good putter on Poa Trivialis. I like Keith Mitchell a lot this week. Scotty, of course, no real surprise being up there in the rankings. That's the bigger surprise is he's not number 1 in terms of overall. EVR, I don't know if I'm as high on Eric Van Rooyen as this would suggest. He is top 10 in by the numbers because he's played so well this year. He's getting some. I was going to say he's garnering some attention. Doesn't actually seem like he is. At least per Gabe's source, the Fantasy National members are higher on him. So someone else to think about. This course value is. Gosh dang it! I did the wrong thing. His course value is low. He's only played Sawgrass once, so I don't want to put a whole lot of emphasis into it. But he did play it well. Top 15 did. Finau, even though he was kind of out of sight, out of mind last week since he decided not to play the Arnold Palmer, he's actually been pretty good this year. Number 1 in par 5s, 3rd in the irons. The putter isn't an abject failure on this surface. So I like Finau. With all the emphasis on accuracy, understandable why Corey Connors is up there. With all the emphasis on accuracy, it's understandable why Doug Gim's up there. And the fact that we don't have a whole lot of putting in here. That's why he's rising. As much as, like Keith Mitchell, as much as I've knocked Sam Burns and his irons, they've actually been acceptable. So he's rising significantly. He is also the number 1 putter on Poa Trivialis in the past couple of years. Siwoo's played this event really, really well in the past. It's going to have to be better at the par 5s, but number 1 in good drives gained. So there's a look at my top 10. A little bit surprising that some of the bigger names aren't up here. Xander, of course, just misses. JT just misses. But when we go through the price board, you'll see that there are some glaring omissions or surprises where some of the top players fall in my rankings and how this is going to be a very, very all or nothing week for me. So as we sort on the price board, we have 6 players in the 10Ks. Or in the 5 digits, I should say. Scotty at 12.8. Very, very prohibitive pricing. So you're making an absolute. You're making a decision right from the start. If you're using Scotty Scheffler, you're going to have to accept going into the 6Ks, maybe twice, or even going into the 5Ks. So that's just a decision you have to make. We'll talk about that as we start building some lineups. Rory did not rate out well for me. He's at 11.6, Xander at 11.3, JT 10.6, Patrick Cantley 10.3, Victor Hovland 10.1. Look, you see Victor Hovland and Rory's ranking here. They did not rate out well at all by the numbers. Victor's played this event well. He is struggling this year, though, and that's why his FNGC rank is so low. He has not been good in the 2024 season. 102nd with the irons. Good drives, opportunities. Par 4s have really lacked. And the short game, which I've been complimentary of getting better, it seemed to have regressed a little bit. That's why he's getting, that's why his ranking is so low, is because we're just factoring in 2024. A lot of the same with Rory as well. And Rory has not been the best here. Yes, he is a former champion at Sawgrass, but he hasn't been all that fantastic otherwise. And that's why I don't have a whole lot in terms of weighting in the course value. With all the water in play at Sawgrass, this course is pretty volatile. It's pretty volatile. Now, players like Tom Hoagie, who we'll talk about in the upper sevens, a little bit different since they have continuously, year over year, proven that they just like Sawgrass. You see his course value is just extremely low. But, or somebody like JT, who is also 4 for 4 in March player championships and making the cut. You know, Rory hasn't been that great here. Patrick Cantley has not been good here. So, you know, Rory and Victor, these are two very, very bold decisions that I'm making that I'm just out. I might have Rory once, maybe, just because, at least per Fantasy National, 7.5% on Rory is just dumb. He's garnering 14% per Gabe source, so I would be much more inclined to believe the 14%, but still, I mean, sub 15% on Rory is shocking to think about, but I kind of have to agree with it. I'm only going to use him once if I do at all, and I'm completely out on Victor. Just completely out. I understand he's one of the premier players in the world. He's played well here. You just can't play everybody. You just can't, especially if I'm going to use a little Scheffler, and I don't like using a lot of Scheffler. 19% per Fantasy National, 33% per Gabe source. I mean, that's just ugly. I mean, if you're starting Scheffler, you're already from the start setting yourself up for a 5v5 against a third of the field. It's just hard to win. It's hard to climb in your GPPs using Scheffler. Now, 50-50s, things of that nature, cash games, cash contests, Scheffler's a pretty darn good play. But in terms of your big GPPs, if you're wanting to do anything other than min cash, game theory suggests that you just avoid Scheffler. It's odd to hear that. I understand, but you're going to gain a whole lot more avoiding Scheffler and him potentially finishing outside the top 15 or top 20 than you will using Scheffler, because everybody's using him and he top 5s or whatever. You're just going to gain more by ignoring him. Xander rated out pretty well, but you see the course values really not all that great. I'm not nearly as high on Xander as this would suggest. He's only at 11.5 per Fantasy National. That's what's, kind of leapfrogging him in terms of my rankings. I'm just all over Justin Thomas. He's proven year over year that he likes Sawgrass. 15% here, 11.5 per Gabe source. That just doesn't make any sense to me. JT's in fine form. It's not fantastic form, but he's in fine form. Just give me all the JT I can handle in the 10Ks, especially off of Scheffler, who I'll probably have a little bit, but his price is so prohibitive that it's just hard. It's just hard to do it unless you're comfortable going into the 6Ks twice maybe even the 5Ks. And I just don't want to do that because there's a certain area of the price board that I really, really like. Good evening, AJ. Thanks for jumping in the chat. It's been a while. Hope things are well. Hopefully you are ready for the Players Championship, and if you're not, hopefully I'll be able to answer all of your last minute questions. But it's good to see you. Good to see you in chat. You think you can win a small GPP if you fade Scotty and he's in the top 5? Ooh, good question. In a small GPP, I'm assuming you meaning small entry, just using nice round numbers. If you're talking about like 100 entry GPP, glad to be back with a new PGA season. Yeah, if you're talking about, and I'm gonna again just using nice round number. If you're talking about like a small 100 entry GPP, if you fade Scheffler and he finishes top 5, oh boy, you're probably in some trouble. That's the whole quote unquote gamble you're taking by not playing Scotty, is that you're banking on him finishing outside the top 15, top 20, because you're going to be gaining a whole lot more by not using him. And everybody's stuck or mired in the muck of whatever, I'm going to say T20, however many points that is. Let's just say you go to Justin Thomas and if he finishes top 10, that's opening up more than 2,000 in pricing. You're gaining a whole lot of uniqueness, at least in terms of per the projections. If he finishes top 5 and you fade him, it's going to be a rough week for you. That's you have to be comfortable looking in the mirror and telling yourself, I'm willing to lose to Scotty Scheffler. And it's not easy to do. I get it. It's not easy to do. But that's the conversation you have to have with yourself whenever you're making a lineup that or lineups this week. Especially since he is so very prohibitive. It's the best way I can answer that. Because think about it, if you do use him and he top 5s, you're just not gaining anything on a lot of people. Because a lot of others are using him as well. He's projected at 33% per Gabe source. So it's a game theory question for you. And I'm willing to look in the mirror and say I lose to Scotty. Having said that, I'm going to use him a little bit because I play a lot of lineups, so I can afford to kind of like mix and match. I'm definitely not going to have 33% Scotty Scheffler. That's what I can tell you. I'm much more on Justin Thomas. Myself, I'm willing to look in the mirror and say, I'll lose to Rory, I'll lose to Victor. That's where I'm at in the 10Ks. Cantley, I don't love this week, but I mean, I think he'll make the cut. He's not impressed me lately, especially since I was very, very in on him at the API. It was very disappointing there. Anytime I try to back Cantley lately, it just hasn't worked out. So that's a little bit of my bias coming in. But I believe in Justin Thomas at Sawgrass. All the shot shaping that it requires kind of suits his game because Justin Thomas is an artist. That's the kind of player he is. He's a shot maker. All that kind of stuff. So in the 10Ks, I'm all over JT. If I don't use JT, I might use Scheffler a little bit. Definitely not to the level of 33%. I'll probably have him a little bit. I might have Rory once. I'm not nearly as high on Xander as this would suggest. I will say he doesn't have a red statistic. 61st here is his worst, which is just right on your, right off the screen. That's a 61. That is his worst statistic. So he doesn't have anything that's bad. Just not nearly as high because he's generally not played Sawgrass the best, especially in March. And I'll fade Rory, and Victor's a full fade. I might have Rory once just because of the low ownership. Victor's a full fade. Victor's a full fade. Moving to the 9s. I don't want to go through every single player in each price range because there's a lot. Let's see. As much as I don't like the player, considering, full year I said to avoid him at all costs. He actually hasn't played Sawgrass the best, but I do like Sam Burns this week. A lot of that being the putter. He's solid on this surface. JT looks like his games. I think he's going to have a better season. Yeah. Oh yeah. He's already shown that, being in contention a couple times. So, yeah. I think JT is going to be. I think JT's are solid this week, and the fact that JT, at least per Fantasy National, is at 15%, per Gabe's source is only at 11.5. That's just, I can't fathom anything below 15% even. So if you get anything under 15% on Justin Thomas, that's a steal in my opinion. I like Sam Burns this week. The irons have been better. He devours par fives. Surprisingly, the around the green metric here has been really bad in 2024. He's a lot better around the green player. You see the number one putter on the surface. Like, everything is pretty solid green, except for his around the green and long rough. I like Sam Burns quite a bit because the irons have been better in 2024. Shane Lowry's in fantastic form. I'm going to use quite a bit of Shane Lowry as well. Oberg, I don't know. I think this feels a better fit for Oberg, just because I don't think it's going to be astronomically difficult. It's fine. He's 10% here, 13% per Gabe source. Okay, it's fine. Lowry and Burns are definitely getting some action this week. Hey Tony, good evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you're ready for the players. Yeah, Burns and Lowry's getting some attention. Hopefully you were able to catch the tail end of how I felt about the 10Ks. If not, go back and catch that after I sign off or after the show. But I'm going to be using some Burns and Lowry for sure. This is some chalk I'll eat, especially Lowry. He's just in fine form. He plays Florida well as it is. You see the course value is pretty good. I think Ober's fine. He's just like in between that 10 to 13%. I think it's fine. Again, Morikawa, I'm just a little bit cautious about. I really am. He's played Sawgrass better than he did the API. I didn't get a lot of things right about the API, but one of the things I did was a full fade of Colin Morikawa. And he was kind of popular. I did not like him then. Maybe a little bit better now, but still, I'm just not in love with it. Spieth, 4.5 here, 11% per Gabe source. Okay, I guess it's okay. Don't feel great about it. Zalatoris is going to be extremely popular. He's in great form. 12.5% per Gabe source. If he's closer to the 12.5%, I like Will Zalatoris quite a bit. If he's closer to the 16.5%, I'd have to pump the brakes on it, because that's a lot, especially for somebody that, while his putter has gotten better, he's generally not been good on this surface. So, but fantastic form otherwise. Hideki, I was going to use slightly at the API. I backed off when I got or heard the news that he was dealing with some back issues or withdrew from the Pro-Am on Wednesday. I don't know, if you're willing to stomach that risk, go ahead. He's played well here. It's just the withdrawal risk, and whether you can stomach that or not is what I can say about Hideki. Wyndham Clark, I was just flat out wrong at the Arnold Palmer. I wanted no part of Wyndham Clark, and he was in contention for the majority of the week. Everything here says that, just like the API, analytically says you should back him. Course value or his course history suggests that you stay away. He had never played the API well, and he was fantastic there last week, so you can think about it. He is very unique. 9% here, 7%, 7% per Gabe source. Probably good, especially if you're willing to back the analytics part of it. So probably a good choice. I probably am going to have more Wyndham Clark than I'm comfortable with based on the ownership or lack thereof. So yeah, in the 9Ks, I'm going to be using a whole lot of these two. It's chalk I'll eat. Wyndham Clark is quite speculative in my opinion. The analytics love him. I'll probably use some Will Zalatoris. I am concerned that his ownership will creep up into the 16 to 18%, and at that point, I would try to back off. Hideki is whether you're willing to stomach that risk. I don't like Morikawa too much. Homa's fine, Spieth's fine. I'm not generally not in this area of the price board. Like I said, if I'm in the 9s, I'm here. So moving to the 8s. Oh, I didn't talk about Cam Young. Cam Young should be good. I like Cam Young this week. I know this course value isn't all that good. I kind of like Cam Young this week. He quieted my concerns, having played the API decently. Yeah, I think Cam Young is a worthy time or two. If you're playing multiple lineups, I think it's a worthy shot to get off of the chalk here. But if you're only playing one or two lineups, I would be here. Siwoo favorite Asian. I really like Siwoo this week for sure. But if you're playing multiple lineups, Cam Young is absolutely worthy of getting off this chalk a few times. Moving to the 8s. I talked about Tommy Fleetwood just completely out. This is a bold thing that I'm doing because he's played extremely well here, but he's just not in good form. I'm just going by the current form. I am most scared about Tommy Fleetwood this week of the Rory, the Victor, and Tommy that I'm avoiding. I'm most scared about Tommy because he's been so good here, and the fact that he is very little ownership, at least per Fantasy National. 11.5 at Gabe Source. So that's why I'm a little bit more comfortable staying away from Tommy, because I think he's going to be, higher than the 10%, especially higher than the 5% it's saying here. The other thing about Tommy, look, he's very good around the green. He's very good on this surface. So it's a bold thing that I'm doing, fading him, but he's just not in good form. Love Tony Finau this week. Number 1 in par 5s, which you have to take advantage of here. Number 3 in irons. I know he doesn't have the elite finishes other than maybe the Farmers. Out of sight, out of mind from not playing the Arnold Palmer last week. He's in pretty good form. I like Tony. All of the emphasis on accuracy this week, you can understand why Corey Connors skyrocketed in my rankings. He's at 11.5% per Gabe Source, 14% here. I think it's fine, especially since he has played Sawgrass well in the past, and it generally rewards accuracy. I do always worry about Corey Connors, and if you think the around the green and the short game is going to factor in more than I am, then stay away from Connors, because his short game is pathetic. Just putting it out there. It's really, really bad. So if you think around the green and the putting is going to matter more than I do, then stay away from Connors. I think it's fine. He's pretty popular, but I think it's fine. Been on. Pretty good. Pretty good, I think. About 9 to 10%. These numbers here aren't impressive, but you start getting into like opportunities. His par 4s are elite. Off the tee has been elite, if I get my head out of the way. He's also the number 1 birdie or better gained player in 2024. I like Ben on quite a bit. Speaking of Siwoo, yeah, I like Siwoo. He's very, very popular, though, P, if you're playing DFS. 11% here, 16% per Gabe Source. I think it's a good play, but just understand he is very, very popular among DFS right now, or at least this week. Number 1, good drives gained, which is what Pete Dye really, really enforces. His irons have been really good as well in 2024, so I like it. He's just not as unique as you might think. So in the 8Ks, I mean, you can look at Jason Day for the course history. But if you're going with course history, I'd just much rather go with Tommy Fleetwood. They're both just not in good form at all. So, Sahith is going to be troubling for me. I'm basically off of him because of this course value, but he's pretty unique. 7% here, 7% per game source. That, again, one of the maybe 3 or 4 things I got right about API, and that's not a lot, is that I was really high on Sahith Theegala, and he played really well except for Saturday. So he's in good form. It's just that course value is horrendous. Henley, I don't like for DFS. You'll see him on social media for me a little bit later, but not in DFS. So that's my exposure to Russell Henley. Love Finau. I'll use Connors. Ben-On's good. I like Ben-On. I really like Siwoo Kim. Min-Woo Lee's kind of interesting as well. Number 1 par 5 performer, along with Tony Finau. So I like Min-Woo Lee a little bit too, but I mean, if he's as wayward as he can get, it's not going to be good. But he did T6 this last year. Interesting, unique play for sure. Moving to the upper sevens, talked about how there was a certain area of the price board that I really, really liked. If I'm not much into the 10Ks, I'm using, mostly the lower sevens, the lower nines. So I'll tell you the area of the price board and the kind of lineups I'm building. Keegan Bradley, solid, and not getting a whole lot of attention either at all. I like Keegan quite a bit. He's been in fine form. The putter is much, much better now, thanks to aim point, however you feel about aim point, but he's been much better with it. Par 3s are good for whatever little they're worth here. It'll have to be better with the par 4s, but you see the course value. He's just been very, very good here. Brian Harman, I'm much higher on Harman than this would suggest, because he is one of the 5 players that is 4 for 4 and making the cut at March Player Championships. He's not been in the best form in 2024. He's getting hurt in that regard, but you see the course value. He's not overly popular. 8% per game source, 10% here at Fantasy National. Top 15 putter on the surface. Also the number 1 3-putt avoider on this surface. So I like Harman a lot more than this would suggest. Hoagie, this is chalk all eat, don't care. Number 1 player in my rankings for a reason. Love Tom Hoagie this week. Because the wind is down, I don't think this is going to play as difficult as it has in the past couple of years. So I'm actually a little bit higher on JT Poston because I target him when it's easier. And I do think this will play easy for the first couple of days. Because the irons haven't been great, but he generally likes shorter courses. And while Sawgrass isn't short by the technical definition, it's not one of these bombers fest like the API was. So I do like Poston a little bit. I love Keith Mitchell, number 2 in my rankings. I love Keith Mitchell. So I'm just everywhere around here in the upper sevens. Keen struggled last week. Don't think he liked the new coming out last week showing he was not selected for the Ryder Cup. I mean, he's using it. It uses motivation, I suppose. I really like Keegan this week. I liked him a little bit last week. And you're right, he didn't play the best. But at the level of ownership that he's projected at, you really got to think about him, especially getting off the chalk of a Siwoo Kim, a Ben-On, a Corey Connors. I do like that in comparison in that regard. I'm just everywhere around here in the upper sevens. Keegan, I'm going to use quite a bit of Brian Harman. I love Tom Hoagie. That's chalk I'll eat. I mentioned Poston. Cole, probably fine. He's kind of getting forgot about. 4.5 per Gabe source, 7% at Fantasy National. He's getting forgotten. Like, the guy is the rookie of the year for a reason last year. Like, he's still good. He just might not be in the best form now, but I think it's fine to consider. Kirk's fine. Scott's played well here. So I am everywhere up here in the upper sevens. Mostly I'll be Keith Mitchell, Tom Hoagie. I like Brian Harmon quite a bit, and I like Keegan a little bit too. So mainly those four, but I would not be surprised if I had an amount of exposure to all of these players. So I really love this area of the price board. That tells you the kind of lineups I'm building. Lower sevens. Again, as wayward as Bezadenhout can get, man, the analytics were fairly okay with him. He's played well here as well. 3.5% per Gabe Source, 4.5% at Fantasy National. It's probably worth a look, especially considering he played okay last week at the API, and that did not feel like a good CBES course. So think about it. EVR, fantastic form. He's got one bad metric. It's the around the green, and he's generally been pretty good around the green in his career. So I like EVR quite a bit. I just expect him to be quite a bit more popular than 10.5%. Although Gabe Source only has him at 5%. This is one time where I'm thinking he'll be closer to 10. But I like EVR. Jack Knapp rated out really well. So did Noren for me. I'm not nearly as high on either of these players for different reasons. Knapp, yes, the win, and he played well the week after. I do worry about some fatigue creeping in at some point. I know he's young, but he's not invincible. So I do worry about a little bit of fatigue, but if he is truly at 4.5 to 3.5%, it's probably worth a look. Norn, I'm a little concerned about this. He also doesn't go low. Birdies are better gained has been pretty bad, so I'm not in love with Noren. Might have him a little bit, but I'm just all about, again, the upper half of the low sevens. Bezadenhout, Van Rooyen, even Adam Hadwin, I know we didn't talk about much, is fine, I think, to think about. So, and then moving into the sixes, there's a few players in here I want to throw your way. We'll start at 6,900. Like Nick Taylor's just, I don't understand why he's getting so just underpriced on DK, just in my honest opinion. Like, the guy won Phoenix. His irons are really good right now. Good luck, P. Thanks for jumping into chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully I hear throughout the week or next Sunday about the success that you had for the Players Championship. But best of luck in all the contests you play. And thanks again for supporting the channel and jumping into chat. I like Nick. I don't understand why he's at 6,900. 9% and 6.5%. I like Nick Taylor. Doug Gim, going to be all over Doug Gim. I don't care if he's popular. Somebody I've targeted all week, along with Keith Mitchell. 12th in irons. Another one of these fantastic par 5 performers. And despite the fact that he's not a good putter, he's actually been relatively okay on Poa Trivialis. He does not have a red statistic across any of those that we gathered or put in the mixed condition model. Love Doug Gim. I will lose if he does not play well. Matthew Pavone is somebody else to probably think about. 10th in irons this calendar year. Devours par 4s, or has been really, really good on the par 4s. I like Matthew Pavone. 8.5 here. 5.5 per Gabe Source. Like it quite a bit. I'll mention Billy. He hadn't played the best here, but I'll mention Billy. It is Bermuda base. I know it's Poa Trivialis Overseed, but it's Bermuda base. It's Bermuda Billy. So you got to think about it. Last person I'll mention two more players I'll mention in the 6Ks. Aaron Rye is going to be much more popular than you think. 10.5 per Fantasy National. 14% per Gabe Source. 14% on an Aaron Rye. It's a good play. I like it. I'm going to use a little bit of Aaron Rye. But, man, that's a lot of ownership for a player that is in the 6Ks. So just be aware of that. So that's why I'm giving you so many names in the 6Ks to maybe get off of the Aaron Rye chalk. The last mention I'll make in the 6Ks is Ryan Fox. Look, I just believe in the talent of the player. I know he's not been good in 2024, but he did top 30 this last year. So when it generally, the more it gets difficult, the better Ryan Fox is. I just believe wholeheartedly in the talent of the player. So, and he's at 2% per Fantasy National. He's at 2% per Gabe Source. You're gaining a whole lot of uniqueness off of him. So, moving to the 5Ks, I'm going to be honest with you. I usually try to pride myself in giving you some really off-the-wall suggestions. Don't really have them this week. I've been avoiding the 5Ks. And that's another reason why I'm not terribly interested in going to Scotty Scheffler, because it's been so hard for me to fit him in the lineups with the players that I like. In the 5Ks, you could look at Carson Young, I suppose. The irons have been good. Gives himself plenty of opportunities. Now, he hasn't converted those opportunities clearly, and especially on this surface. He's not good around the green. I don't know. I'm not in love with it, but I don't want to go... I don't want to give you nothing in the 5K, so I'll mention Carson Young, but I definitely don't love it. So there's a look at the price board, the way I see things, where our fellow contestants seem to be going, and how I see potential pivots and fades and whatnot. Been going for quite a bit of time. We still got lineups to make, so I'm going to try to get through this. For those who play tiers contests, Davis Thompson, really quick, do you know what his price is? Because I've seen a couple of people mention him. And I've not been the biggest Davis Thompson fan. I do know he plays par 5s well. He generally devours par 5s. Do you know his price off the top of your head? There he is, 61. Okay, 31st in Fantasy National. The irons have been good. Okay. Not a whole lot of opportunities. And off the tee has been a real struggle for him. At a course that rewards target golf, especially off the tee, I think he's probably going to have some trouble. You see, the course value has been pretty bad. I imagine it's only one time, so you don't want to put a whole lot of emphasis into that. But he has shown us that he did not like it the first time he played it. Again, with Ryan Fox 100 more, I'm just more confident in the quality of the player that Ryan Fox is. No denying that Davis Thompson's in much better form in 2024. I'm just much more confident in the quality of the player here. But I'll put it this way. When you said Davis Thompson, I did not expect him to be anywhere near 40th or in my top 40. So you might be onto something there. But I'm not entirely in love with it. All right, let's talk about some tiers contests really quick, and then we'll make our classic lineups. For those who play tiers contests, tier 1, Scotty Scheffler, Rory, and Xander. Probably like 67% ownership. I don't care. I'm just more confident in Scotty Scheffler. If you're really, really trying to get unique off of Scotty, I would go Xander. I'm just not a big believer in Rory this week. But for me, tier 1 is a pretty clear Scotty Scheffler. Because I think I can find some uniqueness elsewhere in tier 2. JT, Victor, Will Zalatoris, Wyndham Clark, and Max Homa. Again, this is probably going to be extremely chalky to start. But I'm going to go with JT. I'm just the most confident in him of the 5 in this tier. So I'll go Scheffler, JT. I'm really having to find some uniqueness elsewhere. Tier 3, Cantlay, Hideki, Spieth, Obear, and Sam Burns. I might go Ludwig Obear here. This does feel like it's a good fit for him. He's generally a very, very excellent driver of the golf ball. I'm not a big believer in Cantlay. I don't want to stomach the withdrawal risk in Matsuyama. So yeah, I think I can get off of Sam Burns, even though I like Sam Burns a lot. Just because I've went Scheffler and JT, I think I'm going to go with Ludwig Aubert in Tier 3. If you're not worried about the ownerships, take Sam Burns. He's probably the best play. But I really think I'm going Aubert in Tier 3. Tier 4, Colin, Shane Lowry, Cam Young, J-Day, Tommy Fleetwood, Sahith Theegala, and Fitzpatrick. Pretty clear Shane Lowry for me, although he's going to probably be the most popular player in the tier. So you could look at Cameron Young, but I'll take Lowry in Tier 4. He fits Sawgrass really well. Tier 5, Himley, Finau, Sungjae, Connors, Ben On, Tom Kim, Minwoo Lee. Minwoo Lee's interesting. I'm just in love with Tony Finau this week, so I'll go Tony Finau, and I think he'll be a little bit more popular, or a little bit more unique, than Corey Connors. So give me Tony Finau in Tier 5. Lastly, Tier 6, Hoagie, English, Eric Cole, Chris Kirk, Keith Mitchell, Ricky, and Nick Taylor. As much as I like Nick Taylor, I'm not going to pass up my number 1 or number 2 player in my rankings. I'm going to go with Keith Mitchell because I've taken a lot of chalk, as in Scheffler and JT and whatnot. I mean, they're 1 and 2 in my rankings. By definition, if you're wanting probably the better player, it's Tom Hoagie. But I'm going to go with Keith Mitchell getting a little bit of uniqueness. So this tiers lineup, or tiers construction, goes Scotty, JT. Tier 3 was Aubert. Tier 4 was Lowry. Tier 5, Tony Finau. Tier 6, Keith Mitchell. All right. Let's move on to classic lineups very, very quickly. Feel free to jump in chat with any questions on players or lineup constructions that you have. Be more than happy to try to answer those. But if we're going to try to build these popular lineups that seem to be going, we're going to start with the Scotty Scheffler lineup, as he is 33% per Gabe Source, close to 20 here at Fantasy National, and our fellow contestants are going to Aaron Rai down at the bottom. So there's the boundaries of this chalky Scotty Scheffler lineup. I'd have to believe Eric Van Rooyen is going to get more popular. They could be going double six, although I'm going to try not to do that for them. They could be going double six with Doug Gim. Doug Gim's 14% per Fantasy National, 10% per Gabe Source. So they could very well be going double sixes. Otherwise, let's see. Mitchell's getting a little bit of love at Fantasy National, not per Gabe Source. It would be Tom Hoagie next, and that does not leave them a whole lot in terms of money. So we're going to try this double six. I don't know how popular it's going to be, but that's the only way I can do this and squeeze in as much ownership as I can, because you got Tom Hoagie, who's getting some love. Do I think Rai will make the cut? I do. I really like Aaron Rai, but he is one of the more chalky 6K plays I have seen in a long time, other than Minwoo Lee last week. Aaron Rai is going to be very, very chalky, considering the amount of ownership Scheffler's getting. At least per Gabe Source, there's not a lot in the 7Ks getting garnered other than Hoagie, which, I really like Hoagie. Moving into the upper sevens, we're looking at, Tom Hoagie is there. Siwoo would absolutely be in this. 82. Fitzpatrick, no. Ben On, getting some love. So, if our fellow contestants are willing to do a double six, you're probably going Rai and Gim. Then, like Hoagie, Siwoo Kim, Ben On. I imagine Russell Henley might be in this a little bit. He's been getting some attention as well. 86 a little bit higher up. Connors would absolutely probably be in this. Don't mind him in a 24. Yeah. See, with a 24 person GPP like that, I'm almost treating that like a cash game, like a 50-50. I know the payout structure is not a 50-50. I get that. But with so few entries, I would treat that like a GPP. So I like the Scheffler. I like the Rye. Although I'd probably go with Gim. If you're going that low, I mean, it all kind of depends because, I mean, Gim is 400 less or 400 more than Rye. I like both of them. If they're not doing both Rye and Gim, like it's just kind of hard. Eric Van Rooyen, maybe. Keith Mitchell. Tom Hoagie. Again, 82, which would be Ben On. Siwoo. So there's a look at the Scheffler lineups and why it's pretty darn difficult to build Scotty Scheffler lineups because you're having to forego the 9Ks and most of the 8s, more than likely, with his near 13,000 price tag. If our fellow contestants are not doing a Scotty Scheffler lineup, we've got Will Zalatoris, who's only at 12.5 per game source, 16.5 here. So Will Zalatoris, Sam Burns, absolutely getting a lot of attention. Tommy might be in this, although I'm not obviously a big fan this week of Tommy. Corey Connors, absolutely. Siwoo. Don't think Tom Hoagie is. I think Tom Hoagie is going to be a little bit too expensive for this. So this might be Mitchell and yeah, it would be Doug Gim, which I didn't want to drop into the 6Ks for it, but Gim's getting a lot of love per Fantasy National. Aaron Rye. It's kind of the same players around the bottom of the 7s and 6s here. Doug Gim, Aaron Rye, maybe Eckroat. Eckroat's creeping close to 10% at least per Fantasy National. All right, there's a look at a couple of chalkier lineups. How I've been going about it, gosh dang it. How I've been going about it, I will try to build a Scotty Scheffler lineup first. This is not where I'm generally at. I've been more balanced, but for those who are wanting to use Scheffler, Aaron Rye's fine, right? Doug Gim's fine. I just believe in the talent of the player of Ryan Fox. You could go to like somebody like Nick Taylor, who seems to be getting disrespected quite a bit, at least in pricing. Pavone also could be interesting. Yeah. If you're not all that comfortable with Fox, I mean, you cannot argue with the form that Matthew Pavone has been in 2024. So, several options to get off the chalk in 6K, in my opinion. Going to Pavone, doubtful we can go to the 9Ks. If we do, it'd be like Lowry. Cam Young could be interesting because he's a lot more unique off of these two. But I really don't think we can jump all the way up to the 9Ks. I'm going to try to squeeze a Tony Finau in this. It might be a little bit too much. Looking like it's probably going to be a little bit too much. So instead, we'll come down to Minwoo Lee's kind of interesting. Like I like Keegan. Brian Harmon. You can even go a little bit lower than those two. Keith Mitchell, Chris Kirk. I'm not necessarily in love with Bezaden Hoot, but my gosh, he's got great form or great course history, I should say, and very unique. Then the last one's Eric Van Rooyen, who, again, you want to talk about like Pavone. Van Rooyen's in fantastic form as well. Like, you're right at 10%. You might duplicate this lineup a time or two in your big GPPs, but I imagine you might be one of the more unique Scotty Scheffler lineups. Absolutely. Going to Pavone. Bazenu doesn't seem to be garnering a lot of attention, nor does Keegan. I like Brian Harmon a lot as a safe play. So this is the kind of Scheffler lineup that I've been building, going all the way down into the sevens. You know, you can maybe take out one of these upper sevens and try to squeeze in like a Connors or a Finau or a Siwoo, but this is what's helping you get unique. But the lineups that I've been building have been going JT mostly. But I've been building a lot of these super duper balanced lineups. I just really like a lot in the upper sevens, as you just saw. Shane Lowry. We'll go Tony Finau. I think Corey Connors is a fine play. He's a little bit more chalky, but fine play. Siwoo's fine. Minwoo Lee, top 15 this last year, top 10 this last year. Excellent. Tom Hoge is going to skyrocket this ownership per Fantasy National. Tom Hoge per Gabe Source is only sitting at 11.5. I would be much more interested in Tom Hoge. Well, I mean, I'm going to use him regardless. I'd be much more interested in Tom Hoge at 11.5 because he's going to really skyrocket this percentage. So, I mean, instead, you can look at like a JT Poston. I think is going to be fine. Chris Kirk, Keegan, Brian Harmon. Not much with the English. The English has shown year over year that he just does not like this place. But in fact, we could probably bottom out at like a Chris Kirk or a Keith Mitchell. Yeah, 86. Like, shoot, we can go. Who's 86? Is Henley? Not in love with it, but okay. Been on. A little bit out of order in terms of pricing, but there's a look at a lineup. Again, it's looking like it's pretty chalky, but according to Gabe's source, a lot of these ownerships are a lot less. Like Lowry. Lowry's only sitting at 12% per Gabe's source. Been on sitting at 9%. So you get a little bit more ownership, less ownership with these types. But these are the kind of lineups I've been building. Shane Lowry, Sam Burns. If I am starting JT, which I'm doing a lot, I'm going down to Aaron Ride, Doug Gim, but doing a lot of the same type of players. Lowry, Burns, Cameron Young, I think is pretty worthwhile this week. Tony Finau, if I want to get a little bit more greedy in this style of lineup, but honestly, a lot of my lineups have been going like this. I've been starting my lineups going Gim, Van Rooyen, Keith Mitchell, and Hoge, and then rounding out, because you see I have 1,000 left here, like just mixing and matching around this. Using 3 of these 4 kind of interchangeably, and then mixing and matching up top, whether that's JT and Wyndham Clark, JT and Lowry, maybe a Burns, Cam Young, Finau, that kind of deal. If we go Justin Thomas, this is 10,000, which would be Will Zalatoris. Just kind of mixing, matching up top, trying to squeeze whatever I can around these 4 because I really, really like Hoge and Mitchell. EVR, who seems to be quite unique. So those are the lineups that I've been kind of building for the players this week. I'll stick around for a couple minutes if anyone has any questions. Looks like we got quite a few answers on the poll question. What half of the draw are you favoring, if any? I think I'm in agreement. If I were to target a half of the draw, which I'm not, I think I would try, if in all other things being equal, if I'm using a tiebreaker, I think I would go with the Thursday AM, Friday PM, but I'm not really looking at a half of the draw. As far as one and done, last week was an absolute shit show. I chose Matt Fitzpatrick, one of the 11 players that missed the cut. So I was in second in my division in one and done. I dropped all the way to 11th. still doing good for the year, but missing the cut at a signature event is crippling. So this week, I'm going to be a little bit more safe. Kiss of death here. I'm going with Tom Hoagie in terms of one and done. I've used Tony Finau. I've used a couple of other kind of premier players at different places. So I'm going to go with Tom Hoagie, 4 for 4 at March Player Championships. Just like the form that he's in. And in one and done, I'm not as concerned with ownership at all. So there's my one and done pick. So with that, I believe that's going to be the show. AJ, Tony, thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Can you build a lineup that starts with Scotty? I mean, you can. You're averaging 5,500 per player if you do that. Not just once, not just twice. 3 players averaging in the 5Ks if you're trying to get that start. I mentioned Carson Young. God, I don't know. Carson Young would fit in this. Boy, I don't know. I mean, Justin Suh did top 10 this last year or 2 years ago, but man. Hey, good evening, Darnell. Catching just the end of the show. Yeah, late to the party. No big deal. I just appreciate that you remember to tune in. How do I feel about Stricker? I don't know. It hadn't been great the past 5 years here. I'd go other places if you're going that low. What's up with the weather? I don't see much of a draw of half of the draw. It's really calm tomorrow. Wind might pick up Friday PM, but I don't see a half of the draw to target. Darnell, I really don't. I tell you what, AJ, I'd go Carson Young, maybe Sami Valimaki. I do have some concern because he's never played Sawgrass, and generally you want to have a little bit of knowledge of the course. But at least he played well down in Mexico. Ben Silverman has also been in really, really good form. Florida, yeah, absolutely. No, Florida weather changes, absolutely. But again, I can only go by the forecast. It doesn't look like there's much. Now, it does pick up on the weekend, but in terms of trying to get 6 of 6 for a cut, just play your guys. Just play your guys. With this, let's go Carson Young, Ben Silverman, only because he's been in pretty darn good form lately. And what's that leave us with? 57? Yeah. I've seen a lot of people look at Lauer. I mean, he was fine analytically. Irons are fine. Justin Lauer might be interesting at 57 if you're going that greedy. I think that's how I would build that lineup, AJ. But I really, really am trying to avoid the 5Ks this week. And I usually try to find a diamond in the rough, if you will, but that's bold even for me. But I appreciate I appreciate the question. I'll do the best I can with it. I think that's the way I would go if I were building this much greed up top, which I don't. If you're gonna do this, this is the way to do it. Absolutely, you do a Scheffler and a Thomas. I might back off a Zalatoris maybe, But you're right. I mean, that is a very unique lineup. Very unique. Like if you were to go to like Zalatoris and go to like Lowry or Burns, maybe even a Tony Finau, like you'd be able to squeeze in probably a more quote respectable 6. Like if we dropped to like I don't know how you feel about Cameron Young, but Cameron Young would be ultra unique. Like even if we go with like Shane Lowry here, you're gaining 800, which this comes up to like if we go, this would be like Aaron Rye we talked about a little bit earlier, and then Silverman and Young. I do like Zalatoris, but I think it might be just a pinch too much if you're going to go Scotty and JT and Wilsey. Lowry is in fantastic form, yes. And he loves Florida. He loves Florida golf. So appreciate that lineup. Hopefully you got that in there before I deleted it. But that is going to be the show this evening. I went quite a bit over time. But I appreciate all of the interaction. Love what I do. Talking in-depth sports statistics. Giving you a statistician and analyst's view of what he sees. Trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. So thanks to you for jumping into chat. Thanks to everybody else who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. It helps me out by you all doing that. I ask that you all consider doing that if you haven't. Let me know in the comments of the show or reach out to me on social media how your Players Championship is going throughout the week. And later on tonight, I will be posting my betting cards, or my betting card, and my top player usage for the Players Championship this week. For all the wagers you've made this week for the Players Championship, for all of the DFS contests you play this week for the Players Championship, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.